important because you're going to learn how to use completing the square. And that is very important to pass this class, as well as you're going to need it in calculus, and it's the quickest way to find x-intercepts. Okay, let me just go ahead and tell you, it's the quickest way. A lot of people say, well, it's easier on the calculator. Yeah, but you're depending on the calculator, and that doesn't do anybody any good. All right, so just forget about the calculator. There are 4 ways to find solutions of a quadratic. And that means you need to write these down. There are 4 ways to find the x-intercepts, and that's what we're finding, because you need to find your x-intercepts. And that is the reverse FOIL, and that would be parentheses, x, 3, 2, -3, +2, and set that equal to 0. All right, so that's, and remember, y, plug in 0 for y. Oh, I just wrote that down wrong. Plug in 0 for y or f of x. Okay, remember that. That's how you find your x-intercepts. So when you set the whole thing equal to 0, that's what you're doing, because y is equal to all of this, so that's why you set equal to 0. Shortcuts. X squared, if you have x minus 1 quantity squared, that's going to be equal to, well, that's equal to x squared minus 2x plus 1, and then you set that equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so you have the shortcuts, 1 through 5. Okay, numbers 1 through 5. Quadratic formula, 2.1 x squared minus 3.6 x plus 2.1. That's when you use the quadratic formula. And I bet you $1 to a donut hole that you were taught the quadratic formula solves all the world's problems in high school. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. But this one is the least used. It's the least used because most of your quadratics are going to be set up with fractions and whole numbers. And this is not seen very much unless you have a model or practical application. Then you would use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is actually the least used of all 4. But I guarantee you some of y'all had an algebra teacher that told you to use it all the time. This is the easiest way to do all of these, okay? Why is it easier? Because you use basic math. Well, then why don't people teach it? Because you have to use your brain. I know that's a concept that some people just can't, in academia, they just can't understand why people would have a problem using their brain. But there are some teachers that don't want students to use their brain because they would have to use their brain. This is based on nothing but basic math. Basic math, adding and subtracting fractions, okay? Adding and subtracting whole numbers, multiplying and dividing by fractions and whole numbers. That's why people don't use it, because they can't do the actual math with fractions. All right. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with this being important for future math classes, it's about a 12 or 15. So, and I know y'all know how to use the quadratic formula. I guarantee you some of y'all know the little song. I got told that there was a little song that people negative b plus or minus square root, something like that. Oh, don't even get me
I think
started.
they taught us that at Palmetto.
I'm sorry, say again?
That's what they taught us at Palmetto.
You're kidding.
That's what they told us, the
Yeah.
little song.
And I bet you used it all the time, didn't you?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, let me ask you this. Did they ever teach you completing the square?
Yeah.
Good. That's rare. Usually it's not shown. So let's go ahead and let's look on completing the square. Now I'm going to start with a couple easy ones, a 1 or 2, then we're going to move up to 5, then we're going to move up to 6 and 7, then we're going to move up to 10. We're going to do about 10 problems. And this is going to be the bulk of chapter 3 material. Will you get it overnight? No. It's going to take us 2 or 3 days of doing nothing but completing the square for some of you to get this, because I guarantee you there's somebody in here that's never seen it before. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the quadratic, the basic form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now that's the basic quadratic form. Okay, an example, 3x squared plus 6x minus 2 is equal to 0. That's the basic form. Your goal is to change this form into f of x is equal to a times x plus h, quantity squared, plus k. That's your goal. Because now you have orientation, you have a horizontal shift, and you have a vertical shift, which we went over in the chapter 2 material. Okay, also, while you're doing completing the square, you're going to find the x-intercepts. And you have the y-intercept right here. So what can you do with the x-intercepts, the y-intercept, the orientation, the horizontal shift, and the vertical shift, which gives you your vertex? Okay, what can you do with all of this information? You can sketch the graph. That's your goal right there. That's the goal for completing the square, to do all of this. And completing the square gives you the ability to do all of this. Quadratic formula just gives you the x-intercepts. There is another formula you can use with the quadratic that gives you your vertex, but then you have to back substitute twice to get the vertex. And again, the quadratic formula is only used with decimals, so that's why we're going to be using this. All right, so let's get started. Let's start off with something simple, something that you already know, like x squared plus 4x plus 4, which is real simple. You could do it with reverse FOIL, or you could do it with shortcuts, but I'm going to do it with completing the square because it's real simple, or something like that one. Let me write down what you're going to do, and then we'll do the example on the side. Number 1, set y or f of x equal to 0. That's your first step. Set y or f of x equal to 0 because you're finding your x-intercepts. 2, move C. Okay, C should be on one side, ax squared plus b should be on the other side. 3, make sure that a is equal to 1. If not, I'm going to show you what to do later. That's level 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, when a is not equal to 1. 4, b over 2 squared, and that goes into the blanks. And I forgot the blanks. I always forget the blanks. Move C, add blanks. And I guarantee you that I'm the only teacher that's showing you how to do it this way, because this is the way I learned how to do it as a student. After the teacher went 50 miles an hour on the board, I had to figure out some way to make heads or tails out of it. So I started this list, and I've been using it ever since. Of course, I realize some of y'all invented completing the square with Galileo and Descartes and Isaac Newton. But those of us that didn't invent it, we need all the help we can get. Okay? Number 5. Number 5, shortcut number 1 or 2 on left-hand side. Now, at this point, you've basically have done completing the square. The rest of it, you're going to branch off in here, and you're going to solve for x to get your x-intercepts in one direction. And then you're going to put an intercept form to get your vertex. Okay? So that's how you do completing the square. So here we go. And it's going to change after level 5, because after level 5, we're going to address this. Or before level 5. Later on, we're going to address this. And there's 2 different methods of completing the square. 1, when a is equal to 1, and 2, when a is not equal to 1. So I give you a problem, and that problem is f of x is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 9. All right, so I give you that. The first thing you do is I'm going to turn it around, because I always put my 0 on the right. That's just something I do. You don't have to do that. But I'm going to x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. Now you've got it in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So what does number 2 say? Move C. Well, let me ask y'all a question. Where is the only place I can move that 9? Where is the only place I can move that 9? That means I want y'all to interact with me. The other side of the equation. Thank you, Mr. Yes. I love when students say, well, where do we move it? Well, I don't know. Just move it up 2 or 3 stories, or move it down 2 or 3 stories. That would make a lot of sense. No, there's only one place you can move it. to the right of the equal sign. And I'm going to add the blank. So x squared plus 6x plus blank is equal to -9 plus blank. Now this may differ, this method of completing the square may differ from the way that you learned it way back when or last semester or whatever. There's 2 or 3 ways to teach completing the square. I have tried teaching all the different methods. This one is the one that students can hang on to better. Okay. So take B, so 6 divided by 2 and square it. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to write that in another color. And I'm going to add that 9 here and here. Now, since this is an easy problem that you could do with reverse FOIL or the shortcuts, that's why this comes out to 0 on the right-hand side. Okay, bear with me. We're going to be getting into some more that doesn't come out so easy. All right. So on this side, and I'm going to mark this in pink, which means if I use pink or red, that means it's important. This side right here becomes, after you add the blank, this side right here becomes shortcut number 1 or 2. And it's number 1. So write it. That's going to be x plus 3 quantity squared is equal to 0. Now at this point, there's 2 or 3 things that we can do. One is we can solve for x. 2, we can put it in x form. We can put it in intercept form. Hold on just a second. Let me tell my son something. Okay. And then the third thing we can do is find the vertex from this form right here. Okay. So we're going to go to the next page and we're going to take off from this right here. Hold on just a second. Oh, well. Okay, so here we go. X plus 3 quantity squared is equal to 0. Now, this is very important that you take good notes here. Over here, I'm going to solve for x. So x plus 3 quantity squared is equal to 0. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 3 is equal to 0. X is equal to -3. So that's our x-intercept. Here, we're going to put it in intercept form. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to bring the 0 back over and set it equal to f of x. F of x is equal to x plus 3 quantity squared plus 0. This is the form a times x plus h quantity squared plus k. This is used on your homework and your test questions. I personally don't use this form. Okay, so I need you to make sure you understand that you need to be able to put it in this form for homework and test questions, because as far as I'll do it for you, probably the first 4 or 5 examples, but after that, I'll just do the third option, which is just find the vertex. And the third thing that you can do is just write down the vertex. And if you write down the vertex from this form right here, you just take the opposite of both numbers. So that would be -3. Remember, the horizontal shift is always the opposite of this. So that'd be -3 and -0, but we'll see later there is no opposite of 0. So there is the vertex. Now you're going to see if this was a 4, it'd be -4. I'm sorry. Yeah, it'd be -4. If it was a +5 or -8, it'd be a +8 right here. So we'll get to that later with the more difficult problems. Now, from this information right here, and remember, we know that the y-intercept is 9. We know that from algebra 1 and 2. Okay, so let's write down our information in green. I'm going to use this light green because dark green looks like black. We know that our y-intercept is equal to 0,9. We know our x-intercept is equal to -3, 0. And we know our vertex is equal to -3, 0. Now this is a coincidence. It happens with some, and we're going to get to that later. Also, A is equal to 1. +1. So A is equal to 1. Therefore, we know it's opening upward. And we know that it is a normal parabola. It's not wide, it's not compressed, or anything like that. So now with all this information in green, we can draw, or we can sketch our graph. I'm going to move this over. Let me just, origami time. Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture. Here is my graph. We know that our y-intercept is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We know our intercept is -3, and that's also our vertex. And we know it's opening upward, and we know it's a natural parabola. And from this, we know that our domain, and let's write this down. I'm going to write this down in pink because this is what we are able to get after we sketch it. Well, it's x squared, so we know the domain is all real numbers. Okay? We know that the range is from 0, from 0 to infinity. And we know that it's decreasing from negative infinity to negative 3, and increasing from negative 3 to infinity. Now, this over here in green and pink is what you should be able to do for Chapter 3 material. Now, let me see a show of hands. Let me put it on enrollment so I can see how many hands. And leave your hands up for a minute. Let me see a show of hands. How many people have never seen this before? How many people have never seen this before? Come on, be honest. Okay. How many people are rusty as heck? There we go. Okay, good. Okay, you don't have to raise your hand. I got it. All right. So that's level 1. That's the level that you can do by factoring, you can do by shortcut, you can do by, completing a square. So what's so difficult about more? Well, see, I can add all kinds of things to it. We're going to do another one just so you can have 2 easy ones to refer to. So let's do another one. This time, I'm not going to make it a shortcut. This time, it's going to have to be either factorable by reverse FOIL or not factorable at all. So f of x is equal to x squared plus x minus 7. No, let's make that a 2x because I'm not ready to do that. That's level 3 or 4, what I was fixing to do. All right, so this is a problem, and you know that 1 and 7, 1 times 7 will never give you a 2. It'll give you an 8 or it'll give you a 6, but it's never going to give you a 2. So you know it's not factorable, and it's not factorable. Why is my hand up? Why do I have my hand up? There. I don't know why I had my hand up. I've seen it before, but never understood it. Well, hopefully you understand it a little bit, okay? Because I'm trying to show you this is another way to find your x-intercepts. And hopefully by the time we get through with the 10 levels, you'll understand it a little bit. So we still got a is equal to 1, so everything checks there. So I'm gonna move it around and set it equal to 0. So x squared plus 2x minus 7 is equal to 0. Let's go ahead and highlight the 7 up here because that is a y-intercept. And I have lost, where's my green highlighter? It just disappeared. Damn Russians. There it is. Well, I thought I saw it. Where is it? Damn Russians misplaced my highlighter. There we go. Okay, so go ahead and write down at the beginning of the question that your y-intercept is right there. So you can, if you mess up the y-intercept, don't tell anybody, okay? Because if you tell people that you got the y-intercept wrong, that's not good. So don't tell anybody that you missed the y-intercept. And I'm going to bring the 7 over here and add my blanks. X squared plus 2x plus blank is equal to 7 plus blank. Now we're going to do completing the square. I'm going to do completing the square in another color because this is where you go off to the side and you go, okay, whatever that number is right there, we're going to divide it by 2 and square it. 1 squared is 1. We're going to add that 1 here and there. And that's going to give us, on this side, shortcut number 1 because this is positive. So I can rewrite that as x plus 1 quantity squared is equal to 8. And now I can find all my stuff. I can solve and I can put it in. So I'm going to solve it. Well, I'm going to put it in. Well, I'll go ahead and solve it. So I'm going to solve it. Let me go over here. Maybe I can do it like this. Well, let's go ahead and write it. F of x is equal to x plus 1 quantity squared minus 8. I need you to put this, put something around this or highlight it, and this is called intercept form. It may be called standard form. Okay, that's the a times x plus h quantity squared plus k. So we know we've got a horizontal shift of 1 and a vertical shift of -8. Or you can just look at this and say vertex is equal to the opposite here of -1 and the opposite here of -8. Either way, you're going to get the same answer. The vertex here is -1, -8. The vertex, if you just take the opposite of both, -1, -8. So I've done intercept form. I've got my vertex. Now I'm going to solve for x. So up here, x plus 1 quantity squared is equal to 8. Square root of both sides, square root of both sides. X plus 1 is equal to square root of 8. Now, we're going to talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this right now, and I'm going to highlight that in orange. We're going to take a little detour right quick, and I'm going to write something out about this guy. First, when you see the words exact in the directions, that means they want the answer in terms of a radical. When you see the word approximate, that means that they want it in terms of a decimal. Okay, so if in most of these homework questions, they're going to want it in terms of a simplified radical. So in this case, that's going to be the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, which is 2 square root of 2. Okay, so your final answer in exact form is x is equal to 2 square root of 2 minus 1. Now this is in exact form. Of course, if you're plotting on a graph, that means squat. So then you would go back to the square root of 8. And what I tell students, square root of 8 is closer to the square root of 9, which is 3. So I'm going to say it's around 2.9. X is equal to 2.9-ish. I'm going to put a dot right there. Somebody take the square root of 8 in your calculator and tell me what you get. Please. Anybody? 2.82. I said 2.9. So I'm a little bit off. I'm sorry. 2.82. So now you have everything you need to graph. So I want everybody to take a minute and I want you to draw a good graph. Now you don't have to have graph paper, but at least use a straight edge. I'm going to use one. So I won't give y'all a minute to graph this function using the y-intercept, the x-intercepts, and that's going to be, that's going to be 2.8 minus 1 plus 1 and negative 2.82 minus 1 and positive 2.82 minus 1. So I messed that up right there. So this is 2.82. That's going to be a positive or negative. So 2.82 minus 1 is 1.82. 1.82. And then negative 2.82 minus 1 is negative 3.82. So there's your 2x-intercepts by decimals. Sorry about that. I forgot to do that. So you got your 2x-intercepts, you got your vertex, you got your y-intercept, and you know a is equal to 1, so you know that it's a regular parabola and that it is, opening upward is positive, so it's opening upward, concave up. So I'm going to draw I'm just going to use half the page, that way I can write on the right side. So our y-intercept is negative 7. Okay, so there is the negative 7. And then our x-intercepts are 1.82. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1.82 is about right there. And negative 3.82 is about right there. And our vertex is negative 1, negative 8. And here is your parabola. So our domain is all real numbers because it's not a radical or rational. So it's all real numbers. Range is from -8 to infinity. Decreasing from -infinity to -1, and increasing from -1 to infinity. Okay, open up for questions. This is level 1 or 2, so it's pretty simple. So if you've got questions, you better ask them now. Okay. All right. So we're moving on. Level 3. Level 3 is going to be a question that you're not going to have a number in the middle that is divisible by 2. Okay. So let's do one that is not divisible by 2. So f of x is equal to x squared plus 3x minus 8. And in this case, you know that 1 times 8 will never give you a 3. It'll give you a 9 and an 8. Let's see, 1 times 8. Just a 7 or a 9. Or 2 times 4 will give you a 2 and a 6. So there's no way to factor this by the reverse FOIL. The square root of 8, there is no such perfect square, so therefore it's not a shortcut. So we're going to use completing the square. So x squared plus 3x minus 8 is equal to 0. Set it equal to 0. Move the 8 and add the blanks. X squared plus 3x plus blank is equal to 8 plus blank. Divide 3 by 2 and square it. And I'm going to color that magenta. And that's going to go here and here. And at that point, what do most of y'all do? Quit. Why do you quit? Tell me why you quit. Because it's a fraction, and most high school graduates can't read a ruler, much less do operations with fractions. So this is shortcut. Let me use my yellow highlighter again. This is shortcut number 1. And that's going to give me x plus 3/2 quantity squared is equal to 32/4 plus 9/4. X plus 3/2 quantity squared is equal to 41/4. And at this point, you have completing the square, and now you're ready to find the information you need. So I'm going to let you finish it. Go ahead and finish it. And remember, this is your y-intercept. So go ahead and finish it. I'm going to give you a minute or 2 to finish it. And we got to hurry up because some of y'all are going to start convulsing. And I don't want you to convulse. So I'm going to fold this. Put that at the top up here. Okay, so now I'm going to write it in terms of f of x. So that's f of x is equal to x plus 3/2 quantity squared minus 41/4. And that's in intercept terms. Or I could just take the opposite to find my vertex. I can just take the opposite of 3/2, which is negative 3/2, and the opposite of 41/4, and that's my vertex. Or I can just take the opposite of this and bring this down. Okay? However you want to do it, but remember, this one is the opposite. If you come from up here, you take the opposite of both. If you're given this form, you take the opposite of this and bring this down. So you need to make that distinction between the two forms. This form, you take the opposite of both to get your vertex. This form, you take the opposite of the horizontal shift and you bring down the vertical shift. It's just a personal preference, whichever one you want. Just remember, if they give you this form on a test, you don't take the opposite of both. You bring this down and take the opposite of the vertical, of the horizontal shift. And you learned that in chapter 2. And you took the opposite of this and you brought this down. That was your vertex. Or you said the horizontal shift is negative 3/2. The vertical shift is negative 41/4. You were basically finding the vertex. Now we're ready pretty much to solve for x. So x plus 3/2 quantity squared is equal to 41/4. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 3/2 is equal to the square root of 41 over 2. And x is equal to the square root of 41 minus 3 over 2. Now that's the exact answer, but that's not what I want because I want to graph this function. So I'm going to try to get it in decimals. And I'm just going to do it by hand because the whole point of completing the square is so you don't have to use your calculator and depend on it. So 41 is between, let's see, 41, 36 is 6, 49 is 9. I'm sorry, 7. Okay, and we know that the middle of 6 and 7 is 6.5. So what's the middle? 36 to 49 is what, 13? Half of 13 is 6.5. That'd be 42.5 is in the middle. So I'm gonna say 6.3 or 6.4. So x is equal to positive or negative 6.4 minus 3 over 2. Will somebody give me the square root of 41 right quick and tell me the 6.4 or 6.3? What is it? $6.4. Okay, good. Thank you. 6.4 minus 3 is 3.4, and half of 3.4 is 1.7. Negative 6.3, 6.4 minus 3 is negative 9.4, and 9.4 is going to be negative 4.7, I believe. Now, if you noticed, I haven't used a calculator. That's the whole point. And I'm going to plot my, what's my y-intercept? My y-intercept was -8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And my x-intercept is 1.7 and negative. And my vertex is -3/2 and 10, -10 1/4. And this is my parabola. My domain, I'll do this in green, kind of get it away from everything else. My domain is all real numbers. My range is from -41/4 to infinity, decreasing from -infinity to -3/2, and increasing from -3/2 to infinity. Okay, that's it for today. That is going, we're right now, we're at around level 3. First two we did was 1 and 2. This is level 3. So what do you need to do for homework? We'll just hold off on the homework right now. Right now, we're building up to doing some of the homework. So just bear with me. I want you to kind of take it easy over the weekend. Work on chapter 2 homework if you hadn't finished it. If you want to work on completing the square, I would suggest you make up problems like I did. Okay, and use your calculator to check it. Okay, you can draw the graph with your calculator and see if it looks like your graph. Make them up like this and like that and work with them. And then Monday and Wednesday, we will continue. And then by the time we get to Wednesday, you should be fluent in a lot of chapter 3 material. Okay, has everybody got that? Hopefully you'll trust me. And let me check, see if anybody came in that makes the roll different. You can shut off the recording.